I will do that. This is day 2 of week 6, and I will do a read aloud of that text for today, pages 13 to 23. And then I will do a brief explanation of the tasks for today, which are really similar to yesterday's. Okay, so here we go. It says, while Emily mixed batter for the flapjacks, Mr. Hutchinson went to wake his wife, but returned wearing a long frown, worry lines creasing his deeply tanned face. Elizabeth's got a fever. We'll have to stay here until she's feeling better, he said. That means we should find more food and water. Our provisions won't last too much longer. I saw a stream back there, Jess offered. We can refill our water canteens and maybe catch a few fish. I don't like to leave Elizabeth when she's feeling so poorly, Mr. Hutchinson said. I'll stay here and care for her, Emily volunteered, hoping to give Jess and Mr. Hutchinson much needed time together. Mr. Hutchinson reluctantly agreed and gathered the canteens while Jess got the fishing gear. Emily checked on Mrs. Hutchinson, who was awake and lying under a pile of blankets on a wooden pallet in the wagon. How are you feeling, Mrs. Hutchinson? Emily inquired. Mrs. Hutchinson gave her a weak smile. Please, call me Elizabeth, she said. You and Jess are family now. Emily cautiously smiled back at her, uncertain of what to say. Would you like a cup of tea? Or maybe some flapjacks? Emily asked. I covered them with a towel and kept them by the fire. They should still be warm. Elizabeth nodded gratefully. Emily hurried down from the wagon to make tea and get the flapjacks. As she approached the fire, she stopped dead in her tracks. There, in the campsite, stood a rather small bear gulping down Elizabeth's flapjacks. Emily's mind raced, but she was frozen to the spot. She stared at the bear for a few agonizingly slow seconds, trying to remember everything her pa had taught her about wild animals. Sorry. Emily realized the animal must have been attracted to the camp by the smell of food. She tried to remember everything she had ever been told about bears, but her mind went blank. The young grizzly hadn't noticed her yet, but Emily knew a cub in camp meant the mother was most likely lurking nearby. She needed to get the cub out of there and fast, but how? Emily backed away slowly. She needed to get back to the wagon before Elizabeth came out to see what was taking so long. Everything inside her wanted to run, but somehow she knew that was the worst thing to do. The bear would probably think the bear would probably think of her as fresh food if she ran. She slowly backed away. She froze when the bear cub suddenly lifted its head and sniffed the air, exposing its sharp, sharp teeth. Emily didn't move, and the cub went back to foraging for food. Emily had an idea, but she had to get back to the wagon. She forced herself to gingerly walk the last few steps to the wagon and climbed in, breathing hard. Emily, what's wrong? Elizabeth said. Your face is as white as a sheet. There's a bear cub outside, Emily said, and its mom is probably close by. What should we do? Elizabeth said. I have an idea, Emily said, and she peeked out of the wagon. What she saw outside made her sick with fear. A second bear had joined the cub, and this one was huge, with frighteningly large claws and teeth. Oh no, she breathed, but Elizabeth heard her. What is it? She asked anxiously. The mama bear is here, Emily said. Now I don't know if my idea will work. She knew Mr. Hutchinson and Jess wouldn't be back at camp for hours, and they had the rifle. Emily had promised Mr. Hutchinson that she would take care of Elizabeth. Elizabeth got up from her pallet, pale and shaky, but determined. I'll help. Tell me what you want me to do. Emily said, We'll need the pots and pans. Help me take them down. They lifted the pots and pans down from where they hung on hooks along the wagon's frame. I'm scared, Emily admitted. Elizabeth said, Me too, but we can do this together. They smiled wearily at each other. When Elizabeth reached over and gave her a quick hug, Emily felt a warm glow. Now what? Elizabeth said. Now we bang the pots and pans as loudly as we can, Emily said. My pa told me once that bears don't like loud noises. On the count of three. 1, 2, 3. They beat the pots and pans loudly and yelled until they were hoarse. Finally, they stopped, exhausted. Emily and Elizabeth peeked out of the wagon at the quiet campsite. I don't see anything, do you? Elizabeth asked. Emily answered, No, I think they're gone. The two of them remained in the wagon for a long time after that, just to be sure. But there was no sign of the bears. Finally, Emily said, Would you like a cup of tea now? Yes, please, but I think I'll skip the flapjacks, Elizabeth said. They looked at each other and collapsed into gales of laughter, relieved that the danger had passed. They left the protection of the wagon, confident that they had chased the bears away. Wait, Emily said. She ran to the wagon and came back carrying pots and pans. Just in case, she said, handing 2 pans to Elizabeth. Suddenly, they heard a twig snap and a sound coming toward them. They screamed as loud as they could and banged on their pots and pans. When Mr. Hutchinson and Jess walked into view, they were carrying fishing poles and a line of trout. They also had perplexed looks on their faces. Elizabeth, what in the world are you doing up? Mr. Hutchinson asked. What's going on? Jess asked. Emily, are you all right? We thought you were the bears, Emily explained. Oh, that's rich, Jess said, not believing bears had come and he had missed them. No, it's true. We had a bit of a fuss with the mother and her cub, Mrs. Hutchinson replied. What mother and cub? Mr. Hutchinson worriedly asked. Elizabeth and Emily shared the rest of their dreadfully exciting adventure as Jess and Mr. Hutchinson admired their bravery. Okay, so that is the end of the reading. Let's see if I can go to the ELA packet now for day 2. So if you looked at your directions, day 2, you do the same thing with the circle maps. Select 2 circle maps that you would like to complete. Remember that you don't need to do the 4 of them. Again, they are giving you the words that they want you to work with. For example, this first one is provisions. And I think that most of these words, you can find them in the glossary at the end of the reading. So find the definition and then you can write the definition here. And then you draw. You look for a synonym for the word provisions. And you use the word in a sentence. You can also go back to the texting and find where the word is and try to make sense out of it based on context clues. Or maybe you want to work with the word agonizingly. You want to learn that word better. Again, go find the definition at the glossary. If it's not in the glossary, you can always look it up. Also, illustrate, synonym, and then you use it in a sentence, and so on. Here we have the word horse. Okay. Perplexed. And so again, choose any of those 4. choose two to work with, and then you complete your two thinking maps. Yesterday, I explained how to do this, the making inferences. Remember that when we make an inference, it's basically a really good educated guess based on what we read and based on what we already know. And so if you forgot, you can watch yesterday's video, but also for day one here, notice that they are giving you an example, okay? So here's the inference that this student made. Okay, I inferred that Jess and Emily, and then and Emily's parents got sick and badly injured, and then he goes on to write his inference here. And then here we have the evidence from the text, which is why we made that inference, or the student made that inference, and then explanation, okay? This is an explanation of what the student already knew. And so together, putting these two together, that's how he or she arrived to their inference. And so you do the same thing for day two when you're making your inferences here. And again, in my directions, I said that you may only do one, okay? So, if you want to do the two of them, then you are welcome to do the two thinking maps, but I will only be checking for one, okay? So you make your inferences based on the last pages that we read. Speaking frame, this is just for you to practice saying your inference, okay? So you complete a thinking map here, right here, and then you can practice saying the inference with the evidence and then your explanation. You can do that by using this speaking frame. Okay, the thing that is different today is the writing, because you are comparing and contrasting, okay? We know that right away when we see this thinking map, all right? It's a double bubble map, and we use those to compare. All right, so let's read here the prompt, read the directions, okay? But I'm gonna go straight to the prompt just because of time in this video. It says, how is Emily's attitude towards the Hutchinsons different from Jess's attitude? Okay, so we read about this girl and this boy, okay, Emily and Jess, and we can see that they have different attitudes towards this couple that they are traveling with, towards the Hutchinsons, okay? So we need to find the ways in which their attitude is different, okay? And so because we are comparing these two people and contrasting these two people, one of these bubbles could be Emily. So I'm going to write here Emily. And then here I'm going to put Jess, okay? And then if you remember the bubbles in the middle, those would be for similarities, okay? So I'm going to put here similarities, or the ways in which their attitudes are the same. Okay, so those would go here in these bubbles in the middle. Okay, I am going to give you an example. For example, I can see that both Jess and Emily, they are caring towards each other. Now, this one says towards the Hutchinsons. So they are respectful. I feel like even though one of the two kids don't really, we can say that they don't really love them, the Hutchinson, but I can see that they still respect the Hutchinson. So I could put here respectful. Okay, that's one way in which Emily's and Jess's attitude is the same. Okay, now we need to find ways in which their attitudes are different, okay? And I can see here, for example, reading about Emily. She's very how do we say, appreciative towards this couple. She's grateful, so I'm gonna put here grateful. Okay, she's grateful towards this couple that they're traveling with. Jess, I can see how he's more distant with them. So instead of being grateful and warm towards this couple, he's more distant. Okay. And so the red ones, that would be two ways in which, or a way in which their attitude is different, okay, towards the Hutchinsons. So your job is going to be to find two more, 1, 2, okay? Two other ways in which their attitude is different towards the Hutchinsons. And then you write them in the bubble map, the little bubbles in this thinking map. And then if you can find more ways in which their attitude is the same, then you can put them in the bubbles in the middle. Okay? Okay, so once you complete that thinking map, then again, you take it into writing, and again, reread the directions to make sure that you don't skip anything, okay? And your writing is good. And so basically, you're going to write down your ideas that you put in here. You're going to write them down in this space in complete sentences. If you need more space, then feel free to grab a different or another piece of paper, and then you complete your writing on the other piece of paper. That way it's not that crowded in here. Okay? And so you are writing to the prompt, so you need to, the first sentence, the topic sentence, needs to address the prompt. It says, how is Emily's attitude towards the Hutchinsons different from Jess's attitude? And so you could, for example, begin here. You could say, Emily. So we could say Emily's and Jess's attitude toward the, let me see, the Hutchinsons. So Emily's and Jess's attitude toward the Hutchinsons is different. Okay? And then that's your topic sentence. So now the rest of the sentences, you're going to tell me the ways in which their attitude is different. So you could say, to begin with, Emily, I'm going to put down my idea that I put in red, okay, how the difference is. So you could say, to begin with, Emily is very, oops, sorry. So Emily is very appreciative or grateful toward the couple. And then I'm going, because it's just as attitude is different, then I will put here this word. Okay, that signals that I am saying a difference or a contrasting idea from how they are appreciative, or Emily is appreciative or grateful. So Emily is very appreciative or grateful toward the couple, but Jess is more distant toward them. Okay, and so there I put one way in which their attitude is different. Now your job is to write down a couple of more ways their attitude towards this couple Hutchinsons is different. And I believe that is it for day 2. Okay, questions? Contact me. Okay, have a good day.